Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Afterfauve. Yay, Afterfauve! And those of you who have followed the vlog for any length of time will be familiar with Afterfauve, who often ask the most interesting questions from the most interesting perspectives. So I'm very glad to hear from Afterfauve and to have an Afterfauve question to answer. And this is the question. Afterfauve tells us that recently he has been doing a lot of watercolor painting using the wet paper and wet brush technique. And he has found that when the paint dries, the patterns left from the brush can be used for divination. And he would like my thoughts on this. And my first thought is I think that's a fascinating idea, and certainly a valid form of divination if it works for you. And I am of the belief that pretty much anything can be used for divination, and I have a little story about that. In fact, possibly two. Many years ago, I worked as a psychic for the J&M Psychic Fair in the Chicagoland area. This was a wonderful, diverse, interesting group of people, and one of them was named Robin Locherko. Very good friend, very lovely person, and one of the best psychics that I have had the pleasure of knowing. And one of the best things about her was the great diversity of reading styles that she used. You may have also heard me talk about Rosemary Fletcher, who I knew from that same psychic fair circuit, who I've often spoke about in the same context because of the diversity of styles she used. I think that is a very good thing to do if you are using divination, to learn as many different ways as you can, or even to create as many ways as you can. And Robin had many interesting things that she did. One of the things she did was she read bones. And this is an African technique which does not necessarily involve actual bones. It can be a collection of trinkets, and you read it by what the querent selects, usually by putting their hand into the box or bag without looking and drawing out one trinket. But it can also be done with actual bones. And I remember that Robin, in addition to her trinket box, had created an actual set of bones to read, saving bones from her dinners, and then painting them beautifully with nail polish in beautiful symbolic designs, and using the nail polish because it would hold up to the use the bones were meant for. Fascinating thing. But I remember a conversation she had with Lady Crystal, in which she talked about how she believed that you could read from literally anything, and proceeded to demonstrate by reading the way the light was reflecting on Lady Crystal's cabochon ring. So the idea that you could read from the brushstrokes in an artwork certainly seems quite legitimate to me. If you understand the nature of divination, I think that you can divine from anything. Now, I said I had a second story. In this same fair circuit, there was another reader. I won't mention his name, but in those days, one of the things that I did was past life portraiture, and I would use magic markers. And because of the nature of the medium, I had to have paper underneath because part of the ink would sink through. And it would leave very interesting designs on that blotter paper underneath. And this other gentleman would buy them from me, the blotters, not the artwork, and use them for divination, because he believed that he could see in those designs messages from spirit. And I found that very interesting at the time, very interesting now, and very much what Afterfauve is talking about. Part of divination is the random nature of what you're reading from a rational perspective. And the idea is that deity communicates through these random means if you permit it, and if you have a language of symbols to understand. So yes, if you are reading the brushstrokes in a painting, I think you absolutely can do that. Now, if you were to ask me how to do that, I don't do that, so I'm not quite sure how you would do it. But I would assume you would look for symbolic shapes, or even symbolic directions, because you can read by direction. And you would get your messages in that way. So I think it's a fascinating idea. And I think I would even challenge people to perhaps try it for yourselves. and see how many different things you can divine from. How many things that may be seemingly random, but in fact reflect spirit. And this is the idea of as above, so below, that spirit, however you want to describe spirit, is reflected in every aspect of the created world. And the will of spirit, the messages of spirit, can be found in totally random things. So again, I think this is a fascinating idea, and those would be my thoughts on the matter. I hope you find them helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be.
Athame. The magical knife, or Athame, or Athame, is an ancient tool of magic. It is used for many purposes, including casting the magic circle and preparing various magical items or ingredients. In certain traditions, the Athame must be of a particular color and made in a particular way. But in general use today, an Athame can be any sort of knife.